So, hey there, my friends. This is a deck that has been on my table for a long time, or really up on the shelf. And I actually did do a recorded walkthrough of it when it came in, but I was a little maybe disenchanted by it at that time for a few reasons. One being that I couldn't remember why I backed it. I just sort of didn't know what it was about the deck that made me go, "Oh, I should back this." Um, and I also in the guidebook, the artist slash author refers to Arthur Edward Waite as Andrew Waite, and I said, "Oh, you should probably know your stuff," and I was a little bitchy about it. So, and then I forgot all about it, and I didn't post the walkthrough because I just didn't feel like I was being fair to the deck. But the other day I saw that Indie Deck Review had done a review of it, and it was pretty good. And I said, well, why, let me go back and look at it. And then my friend Liz said, you should do a walkthrough. So this is hard to get, but it's gettable. So Fyodor Pavlov does offer the deck in sort of dribs and drabs. So he'll do like, there's X number of decks available for purchase starting at X time on this day. But if you don't want to deal with that, there's going to be a mass market edition through US Games. Um, it's a deck that I think it's a beautiful deck, and I can see why it's been picked up by a mass market publisher, and it's many things that I talk a lot about on this channel. There's inclusivity in terms of body sizes. Um, there's queerness in the deck. There are different cultural and ethnic physicalities. So I think part of the other reason why I was kind of hard on it was that I'm just a little exhausted with Rider-Waite-Smith decks, and I think it was a little bit of deck burnout, and I wasn't super being fair to the deck as much as I was just sort of being exhausted with just how many of this kind of deck there is in the world. So, objectively, it's beautiful. It does have some of the things that I talk a lot about, and I mean, it was really nicely produced. This was the Kickstarter edition, so I mean, I've literally had it since the Kickstarter shipped, which was ages ago. I can't even remember, to be honest with you. But I feel like it was a long time coming too. Like the Kickstarter kind of went on for, or waiting for the deck to come from the Kickstarter. It came out for a while. So let's take a look. Let me zoom in actually. So this is the little book that comes with it, and it's pretty, it's pretty standard fare for a little guidebook. There are thoughts from the artist, and the artist clearly there's references to Rachel Pollack, etc. And there's also some things I think are important too. There is a recognition of diversity and gender and queerness, etc. So I think in that sense it's really successful. And a lot of my quibbles with it I think really did come down to just deck exhaustion with Waite-Smith. So I don't know that the mass market edition will have these gold backs. I actually kind of hope they don't. I'm never really a fan of that. It's fine. I know I'm so bitchy, right? It's like, here's a beautiful deck. It's fine. It's not fine. It's great. It's gorgeous. Love it. Just there are some things, and it's not like, oh my god, this ruins the deck. I don't know. It's not a thing I ask for. It's an interesting deck too, in that the coloration of the people. Sometimes the images are really just black and white, or really this sort of off-white line drawing, and sometimes there's color, and each of the suits really seems to have a color associated with it. And what I think is interesting about that is just because the faces aren't necessarily painted a particular flesh tone, they might, like in this case, just be blank. What the artist does, and I think it's a key for folks who want to be creative and also inclusive, is that the artist recognizes that it's not simply the color of one's skin that indicates or are features of an ethnic group's appearance. You know what I mean? So they recognize that there's facial features and body postures and clothes and, all sorts of things that are more nuanced than simply the color of someone's skin. And you can see that in the cards, even when the faces or the skin is this neutral, and I use that term artistically, not it's this off-white color. So neutral kind of has connotations that it's the default, and I don't want to presume that. So anyway, here's the Fool. Here's the Magician. I really like this Magician a lot. And for my channel, I don't really go through all the symbolism on the cards because it doesn't really mean that much to me. But you can see here it's an adaptation. It's a riff on the Waitsmith. Here, definitely this is Delphi. This is the fumes coming up from below the ground, and so you have this oracle Delphic quality to it. There is nudity in the deck, which does not bother me one bit. And here's the lovely Empress card. The Emperor. I appreciate that the Emperor is sort of neutral. I talk about that with card images, and the Emperor, I think, gets a lot of crap in some decks. But as I always say, all the cards are neutral, and this is neutral. Fairly traditional Hierophant. The Lovers. There's queerness here you can see in sort of non-binariness. And again, I think I didn't kind of get that, or I wasn't focused on that when I did my initial walkthrough. I was just sort of focusing on things because I was a cranky mood or something, and I just was like, I'm going to take it out on this deck. Here's the Chariot. In fact, I thought about getting rid of it, and I hadn't even really thought about it much until it came out for Indie Deck Review, and I was like, oh, I should take another look at that. I love this Strength card. I love that this sort of wolfish creature is here. Not as in love with this Hermit. It's a little sort of fairy tale for me, but it's fine. Wheels of Fortune are usually my least favorite card, but I think this does a nice job incorporating traditional, by which I mean, Golden Dawn, and kind of a modern perspective, and sort of recenters Fortuna too, which I think is interesting. Justice. Looks like a friend of mine, actually. The Hanged Man. I would say probably the major thing here is that the Hanged Man is shot with arrows. I really love this Death card. It may have been one of the reasons why I had initially backed the deck. There's just something about it that feels so, I don't know, perfect. Well, that's saying a lot. I don't know, there's something kind of weird and sexy about it, but also, I think that that's a quality of the card that doesn't really get talked about too much. There's sort of an allure to that. Temperance. I like this Devil card because it does indicate sex and kink, which I think are qualities that are definitely part of the card. Tower with this kind of Icarus and Daedalus situation going on. The Star. The Moon. I like this wolf howling at the moon. Something about this card includes, to me, that primal part of us, that animal part of us. And in concert with the Devil, I think those are aspects of the card that I think sometimes get overlooked. Sun. Judgment. And the World. And it's nice to see someone of size not as the Devil or the Nine of Cups. So, again, I'll put that out there. So now, obviously, we get into the suits. As I mentioned, there's sort of a dominant color in the suits, and in wands, there's a green tint to some of the cards, like the leaves here, in the hat and the scarf, on the leaves, on the globe, on the map. Here, very Waitsmith. There are some cards that are departures from Waitsmith, but this suit is pretty tradish. And again, by traditional, I don't mean traditional by tarot standards. I mean traditional by Golden Dawn standards, which actually I really would like to decenter in my talking about the cards, because I'm not really a big fan of the Golden Dawn, to be honest with you. So there's a lot of nudity in the deck. Again, that doesn't really bother me at all. I know that some people really don't like that. It is not a thing that I am concerned with. So little things that are interesting here. The card features an amputee, which is something I think, again, you don't really see a lot of in decks, and I think is meaningful when someone who might have had an amputation sees, oh hey, it's not being presented in a weird way. It's a soldier, after battle with this very kind of Grecian, ancient Greece quality, but you don't see that much in decks. And so, sort of returning to this with a fresher gaze, I'm less mean about it than I was. I'm curious to know, where, what choices led to sort of certain images having skin colors and certain images have just sort of black and white, or again, this black and off-white. But it's not abrupt. It doesn't feel strange. It's of a piece. So here we get into cups, and this obviously has a blue tint. So little small things here, instead of traditionally, obviously, male and female presenting people on this card, we have, certainly an array of gender could be read within this. I also like the cape with the moon on the back. And it's undeniably beautiful line work. I mean, the flow of the tree, it's very visceral, and it's really strong, and it's beautiful stuff. If I'm not sounding enthusiastic about it, it's not because I don't like it. It's just I'm not really reaching for Waite-Smith decks as much. When I am reading now, I'm always using pip decks or sort of non-representational, more abstracted images. So again, but as a reviewer, I think it's important for me to say, look how nice, and look how nice, With any deck, I think there is always more that could have been done. There's always more centering of people of different experiences, but I would say this is as good a deck. And here's an example of how we have an experience of Latinx folks here, but we don't have a skin tone to indicate that. But what we do have are facial features and clothing and cues that sort of indicate it's more than just having people of different color in a deck. It's that there's cultural connections, there's facial structures, there's qualities that we have that extend beyond skin color that can indicate. And so sometimes people will say, well, how can you tell if someone's queer in a picture of just a random person? But you can tell. There are different clues, context clues, that are in the image, and I think you can see that certainly in the Lover's card, and in others throughout the deck. And I think that this succeeds in that regard. And it's a good reminder that there are, I don't know, I mean, there are ways of indicating things without being stereotypical, and also without just sort of resorting to the obvious. And I think that's another way in which this deck is successful. So we get a red for the swords. I have mixed feelings about this. I actually talk about in my book how in the Waite-Smith image that it's not even a human heart. Here it's a human heart. But I mean, that's the thing I always have to sort of wrestle with when it comes to the suit of swords in a Waite-Smith deck. Not my favorite iteration of the 4-2, but it's like, again, the strength of that tree and the line work is really breathtaking. I do really like the 6. The 7 of Swords is always an image I've never really made much connection to. There's something really interesting here about how the tree and the hair and the ground, you can't sort of tell where one stops and the other one starts. I like this because I like owls. And this, I think, will please a lot of folks who aren't fans of the Waite-Smith 10 of Swords. And then the coins has sort of a gold, burnt orange color. You can see it's not a dramatic imagining of the deck, in the sense of it relies on the same situations by and large that the I talked about this with another deck I haven't released my review of, Terra Volatile. It's tricky to me with religious imagery and particularly money and sort of stereotypically Jewish. And I say that because of the prayer shawl. I just wonder if there's some sort of coded message, and it makes me uncomfortable. And I think that is a thing that with a deck creator, you have to be careful of, not just being inclusive, but doing it in a way that doesn't click coded, suggestive, problematic images. This isn't awful, but it does make me go, why this choice for this card? Now, this is a card that's often associated with generosity, but there's also something about it that's kind of subversive in that it has a quality of sort of someone with a lot giving a little bit. So, I just, we have to learn to see the world through the eyes of people who have been, well, we can't really do that, can we? We have to learn to look at the coded things that have been part of history and the way that certain folks have been depicted in a way to create or continue problematic stereotypes. Another sort of indication of someone here in a wheelchair, which, disabilities are not easy to depict in some cases. You do, some disabilities are invisible to the naked eye or to the eye at all. And so we tend to resort to things, but it's nice that it's not the Chariot, which it always seems to be. So that is the whole deck. It is really a work of art. I think it's gorgeous. Cardstock is linen. I don't love linen card. It's just, for me, I find it so slippery that it becomes hard to shuffle. But it's, I know it's really popular, and so if it pleases you, that will please you. It's a beautiful deck. It's not a perfect deck. I think there's some things with it that, like all decks, I would prefer to see done differently, but that's how this goes. And I think it's lovely. I think it does a really nice job of what it's trying to do. I always think things can go further, but this does a pretty good job, and it's undeniably a beautiful deck. So I'm glad that I didn't give it away, and I'm this is probably one that I should reach for more, given that it does achieve those things that I'm constantly sort of saying we need more of, and I'm not the only one who says that. But so anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. This was the Fyodor Pavlov Tarot. Follow the artist on Instagram to see when they do drops of this indie version, or you can wait till next year for the US Games edition. Take care, be good, and we'll see you soon. Bye.